So guys, just like we told you in our last video, that joint practice against the Saints was absolute chaos. Things got heated, there was a lot happening on the field, and through all of that, we still saw some really encouraging things from this Cowboys defense. And now, Christian Parker has finally spoken to the media about where this defense stands after those joint practices. And guys, one part of that press conference really caught my attention because Parker was asked some very interesting questions about this defense, and his answers gave us a much better idea of what the Cowboys may actually have planned. So, let me explain what Christian Parker just revealed about this defense. What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Okay, so let's start where all this really begins, and that's with Caleb Downs. Now look, I know a lot of you already know he's playing well, but honestly, that's not even the real story here. The real story is what Dallas is actually doing with him. In the first preseason game, we saw him at deep safety. We saw him in a two-high shell. We saw him rotate into a single high. We saw him lined up in the nickel spot in the slot. And on top of all that, there are already whispers about him getting reps at linebacker in certain packages. I mean, think about that for a second. One rookie, and he's already touching almost every spot on this defense. That's not normal usage for a first-year guy. That tells me Christian Parker isn't just plugging Downs into one job. He might be building this entire defense around how versatile this kid actually is. And it's not just where he lines up, it's how much they trust him already. Word out of camp is that Caleb Downs has even handled some green dot type duties during practice, even though that job usually belongs to a linebacker. Dak Prescott spoke on him too, saying he's as sharp of a young guy as he's ever seen, and that it starts with his mentality and how he approaches the game. And get this, Jerry Jones himself said they shouldn't even call it nickel anymore, they ought to call it Downs. When your own owner is saying that, you know the front office already sees what kind of piece they have here. And honestly, once you understand why, it makes so much sense. Parker has talked about what he wants from that nickel spot, and it is way more than just a normal slot corner sitting back there covering shifty receivers. In his own words, that guy has to be a corner sometimes, a safety sometimes, a linebacker sometimes, and even a defensive end when he's blitzing. That's basically asking one player to be 5 players. And when you watch Caleb Downs, that description fits him almost perfectly. He can hold up in man coverage. He can come down and support the run. He can blitz off the edge. He can communicate checks before the snap. Look, that's exactly the kind of chess piece a defensive coordinator dreams about, and it's exactly why I think Downs is going to be the centerpiece of whatever Christian Parker is building here in Dallas. In base personnel, it sounds like the plan is Downs and Jalen Thompson as your 2 safeties, and then when Dallas goes to nickel, Downs can slide right down into that slot role. There's even been talk of rotating Cobie Durant in on obvious passing downs when coverage matters more than run support. That's the kind of flexibility Parker seems to want. Different combinations depending on the down, the distance, and who's lined up across from them. Now, when Parker was asked about where this defense actually stands after 2 joint practices, he compared the whole process to working toward a master's degree, saying they're still enrolled in the program, still making progress. A lot of tests have already been passed, but there's still more work to go. And when you think about what he pulled from those 2 joint practices, it really does sound like homework. He talked about how valuable it was seeing 2 completely different offensive systems back to back, one from the Rams and one from the Saints, just to see how different teams try to create problems and how his defense has to adjust and solve them on the fly. That's not the kind of thing you say if you're just running a basic cookie-cutter scheme, guys. That's a coordinator who's actively building layers into this thing. Now, here's the thing, guys. This isn't just about one player. Once you understand what they're doing with Downs, you start to notice the same patterns showing up all over this defense. Take Shavon Revel, for example. He's basically going through his rookie season right now because of that ACL injury that kept him out last year, and from what Parker has said, the growth has been noticeable. He runs to coaching, meaning he actually chases out his mistakes instead of hiding from them. And that's exactly the mentality you want in a scheme this complex. Then you've got Reddy Steward, who's been moved around quite a bit himself, mainly working the nickel and slot corner spot, but also getting reps at safety when the depth chart calls for it. Parker has praised how fast he processes information, and that matters a lot in a defense built on disguise, because you need guys who can adjust on the fly without getting lost. And it doesn't stop there. Marist Liufau is out there learning to play on the edge, which honestly is a tough transition. Parker has talked about how much faster everything happens once you're closer to the line of scrimmage, and how Liufau still has to clean up things like hand placement and getting skinny through blocks. But the flexibility he's building gives this defense even more disguised potential. Then you've got Donovan Ezeiruaku, who's clearly got that edge and that fire, but Parker is working with him on controlling it. This is actually the second time in camp he's been pulled aside for it, so it's something Parker is staying on top of. And I actually respect how Parker handled that publicly. He didn't throw the guy under the bus. He basically said, look, we're a better defense when you're on the field, so let's find a way to keep that competitiveness without crossing the line. That's smart coaching, and it shows Parker cares about developing the whole player, not just the traits, while still holding him accountable. And then, of course, you've got Von Miller coming into the mix now too. Parker talked about how they're not putting a cap on what Miller can be this year and how they want that pass rush to feel like one unit, not a bunch of individual guys just trying to get their own sacks. So when you line all of this up, Downs at safety and nickel, and maybe even linebacker Revel developing at corner, Reddy Steward flexing between safety roles, Liufau adjusting to the edge, Ezeiruaku learning composure, and Miller anchoring the rush. You start to see it, guys. This isn't just a normal defensive install. Christian Parker is building something layered, something that can shift shapes depending on what the offense throws at it. And that actually brings me to something else that's been floating around, and honestly guys, it makes a lot more sense once you understand everything I just walked you through. There's been a story going around that Christian Parker pushed to have team reporters banned from filming practice, before it eventually got reversed after some backlash. Now, whether that whole situation played out exactly like that or not, what we do know for a fact is what Parker himself said about it. He straight up admitted that when he was coaching in other places, Green Bay, Denver, Philadelphia, he used to actually watch Cowboys media coverage before facing Dallas. He said he was looking for anything, injury notes, who was out there, little context clues that could give him an edge as an opposing coach. So think about that from his side now that he's the one running this defense. If Parker is willing to admit that he personally used that kind of footage against Dallas in the past, of course he doesn't want opposing coaches doing the same thing to him now. He was even pretty blunt about it, straight up saying he's not a fan of clips floating around online, and honestly, that reaction makes a lot more sense once you know his history of using that exact kind of footage against Dallas himself, especially with a defense this complicated. If you're disguising coverages, moving your best player around to 5 different spots, and trying to keep your pass rush combinations a secret, the last thing you want is some random practice clip online giving away your formations or your personnel groupings before the season even starts. It all connects, guys. The more disguise and flexibility Parker builds into this defense, the more protective he's going to be about who sees it. And that really brings us to Parker himself, because I think this is where everything ties together. He's talked about wanting to stay calm and analytical on game day, even when emotions are running high around him. He said his job is to be the steady one, the guy who brings things back to neutral no matter what's happening on the field. And when it comes to game planning, Parker said something that stuck with me. He talked about needing to know whether you're facing a team that's more about scheme or more about specific players, and either way, his whole goal is to make the offense play, in his words, left-handed. Meaning he wants to take away what they do best and force them into uncomfortable situations. So, I don't know about you guys, but the more I hear from Christian Parker, the more confident I feel about where this defense is headed. This isn't a coordinator just running plays. This feels like a guy who's actually building something with a purpose behind every single decision. So let me know down in the comments, are you buying into what Parker is building here? And how excited are you about Caleb Downs specifically becoming the centerpiece of this thing? Drop your thoughts below, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Cowboys Nation, let's go.